no matter where you are in the world today. I hope you're healthy and safe. And today I want to talk about something that may be a little different from what other speakers have spoken about. You know, most speakers, I'm guessing, have spoken about how to build better products. Today, I'd like to speak about how to build better products by being a better you. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Hooked, which maybe some of you have read. It's about how to build habit-forming products. And this book is really about how can we build healthy habits in users' lives. You know, many of us in the product design community, probably all of us, have struggled with the problem of getting people to engage with your product or service. You build something amazing, and for one reason or another, people don't do what you want them to do with it. They don't use it. They don't become habituated to it. Why not? And so that's really what Hooked was for. It was for the product people out there struggling with building healthy habits in people's lives. And so what I wanted to do was to democratize techniques from Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and Slack and all of these various companies that are really masters of changing user behavior so that we can democratize these techniques. I didn't write this for the social media companies and gaming companies. They've known the techniques for years. I wrote the book for you, not them. I wrote it for people who are building exercise apps like Fitbod that get people hooked to exercising in the gym. Educational products like Kahoot, the world's largest educational product. They just went public a few months ago. They built the product from the ground up using the Hooked model to get kids hooked to learning. Companies like the New York Times, one of my clients that I've worked with to get people hooked to engaging with the news every day. So we can use these techniques to build healthy habits. But there's another side to this coin. And the other side to this coin is that sometimes products are built so well that sometimes we use them too much. And this happened to me in my own life. Shortly after Hooked was published, I found that it was time to reconsider my relationship with distraction. And I remember I was with my daughter one afternoon, and we had this beautiful day planned. And one of the things that we were doing was reading a book of different activities that daddies and daughters could do together. And one of the activities in this book was to ask each other, if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want? And I remember the question verbatim, but I can't tell you what my daughter said, because in that moment, I thought for some reason that it was a good idea to check my phone instead of being fully present with someone I love very much. And the next thing I knew, when I looked up from my phone, my daughter had left the room. She'd gone outside to play with some toy because I had sent her the message that whatever was on my screen was more important than she was. And I'd blown it. And if I'm honest with you, it didn't just happen when I was with my daughter. It would happen when I was at work. And I would say, okay, I'm going to stay focused. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. And somehow 20, 30, 40 minutes later, I hadn't started the project that I said I would work on. It happened when I would say I was going to exercise, but I wouldn't. Or that I would eat right, and I didn't. Time and time again, I wasn't able to do the things that I myself told myself that I would do. And so if you ask me today, what superpower I would most want, I would tell you I would want the power to be indistractable. You see, I think that becoming indistractable is the skill of the century. The world today is potentially more distracting than ever, and there is no domain of your life that isn't impacted by your ability to do whatever it is you say you're going to do. Whether it's to exercise regularly, to eat right, to be present with the people you love in your life. You know, today we don't have the excuse to say we don't know what to do. We all basically know what to do. Who doesn't know how to lose weight? Who doesn't basically know how to have a better relationship with the people in your life? Be fully present with them. Who doesn't know how to be better at their job? Do the work, especially the hard stuff that other people don't want to do. We know this stuff, and if you don't know it, Google it, for God's sakes. It's all out there. The problem is no longer that we don't know what to do. The problem is we don't know how to stop getting distracted. That is the problem preventing us from living the lives we want and doing the kind of work we know we can do. So when I started this journey to figure out how to become indistractable, one of the first things I learned was that this is not a new problem. That in fact, the philosopher Plato talked about this very problem 2,500 years ago, 2,500 years before the iPhone, this thing that we think caused us to get distracted. People were complaining about how distracting the world is. And in fact, Plato had a word for this. The Greek word was akrasia, the tendency that we all have to do things against our better judgment. And Plato wondered, why is it that despite us knowing what to do, why don't we just do it? And of course, we face the same exact problem today, that the problem is not in our technology. The problem goes deeper, much deeper than just whatever it is that's distracting us these days. One way, I think, to think about distraction is to understand what is the opposite of distraction. Think for yourself for a minute, what's the opposite of distraction? Now, most people will say that the opposite of distraction is focus, but I don't think that's true. That in fact, if you look at the origin of the word distraction, the opposite of the word is not focus. The opposite of distraction is traction. That both words come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice that both words end in the same 6 letters. You see that? Both words end in A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action. So traction is any action that pulls you towards what you want to do, things that you do with intent, things that help you live out your values and be the kind of person you want to be. The opposite of traction is distraction. Any action that pulls you away from what you plan to do, anything that does not align with your values and help you be the kind of person you want to be. So this is really important for 2 reasons. Number one, anything can be a distraction. Tell me if this sounds familiar. This used to happen to me all the time, okay? I'd sit down at my desk and I'd say, okay, I've got that big project I have to do. I have to finish that RFP. I have to finish these wireframes. I've got to do this, whatever it is. I'm going to sit down at my desk and I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to just do that one task. I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm not going to get distracted. Here I go. I'm going to get started. But first, let me just check some email. Let me just check that Slack channel real quick, or let me just do that one thing on my to-do list that I just need to check off real quick. How many of us have done that? Tell me in the chats if that's happened to you. This used to happen to me all the time, and I would justify it to myself saying, well, it's a work task, right? Checking email is a work-related thing, so that's a productive thing. It's okay if I just do that real quick, right? And what I didn't realize is that I was allowing distraction to trick me into prioritizing the urgent at the expense of the important. You see, this is the most dangerous form of distraction, not Facebook or a video game. If you're on a video game, you're playing Candy Crush when you're at your desk, you know you're slacking off, right? It's pretty obvious. But when you're checking email, it feels like it's productive. It feels like something you should be doing. But if it's not what you plan to do with your time, it is just as much of a distraction as playing Candy Crush. So anything can become a distraction. And conversely, the second point of why this is so important is that anything can become traction. So I'm sure many of you in the tech community, we've all heard this mumbo jumbo that technology is addicting everyone, that it's hijacking our brains, that it's making us do all these things and manipulating everyone. Look, I wrote the book Hooked. I know all their techniques, and I'm telling you, that is rubbish. It is not true. That in fact, we can use all of these tools to benefit us as long as they serve us and we don't serve them by turning distractions into traction. How do we do that? We decide when we will use them. There's nothing wrong with watching Netflix or going on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. These tools are wonderful as long as you use them on your schedule, not some app maker's schedule. So we're going to talk a bit more about that, but I want to get into for a second what prompts us to either traction or distraction. We know the difference between traction and distraction is intent, right? Is deciding to do whatever it is we say we're going to do, right? But what prompts us to traction or distraction? Well, two things. The first is what we call an external trigger. An external trigger, you know what these are. You build these every day in your products. These are the pings, the dings, the rings, anything that prompts us to either traction or distraction, things outside of us. Now, this is what we tend to blame for distraction. We say, oh, I wanted to get to work, but my iPhone rang, I got an email and that distracted me. But those are just external triggers. That's not the source of the problem. The real source of the problem, if you look for what is the number one cause of distraction, the number one cause of distraction is not what is happening outside of us, but in fact what is happening inside of us. That the leading cause of distraction is what we call internal triggers. Internal triggers are these uncomfortable emotional states that prompt us to seek relief through distraction. Now, this is where we have to start. If we are going to answer Plato's 2,500-year-old question of why do we do things against our better interests? If we know what to do, why don't we just do it? We have to understand not only why we get distracted, but why do we do anything and everything? That in fact, the root cause of everything you do is not pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is what most people believe. Most people believe it's about carrots and sticks, right? Pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is called Freud's pleasure principle. But unfortunately, neurologically speaking, it's not true. That everything we do is not about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, but in fact, everything you do for one reason. And that one reason is the desire to escape discomfort. Everything you do is about a desire to escape discomfort. Even the pursuit of pleasurable sensations, wanting to feel good, is itself psychologically destabilizing. Wanting, craving, desire, lusting. There's a reason we say love hurts, because wanting something is itself uncomfortable. So what this means, if everything we do is about a desire to escape discomfort, that therefore means that time management is pain management. Time management is pain management. What that means, I'm telling you, I've read every productivity book I can get my hands on. I know all the tips and tricks and life hacks about how to be more productive and get things done. And let me tell you, not a single one of them works. Not one of them, unless you first understand what is the discomfort that you are trying to escape. Why do you get distracted? The answer is what emotion you are trying to escape. Is it fear, loneliness, uncertainty, stress, fatigue, anxiety? What is that internal trigger that you are trying to escape by turning to a distraction? That is the root cause of why we go off track and do things we didn't intend to do. Procrastination and distraction is not a character flaw. There is nothing wrong with you. You're a perfectly human, normal person. Everybody gets distracted from time to time. The difference between someone who is indistractable and someone who lets their emotions cause them to do things they didn't intend is that the indistractable person has tools at their disposal that lead them towards traction rather than distraction. So what we have to do in order to become indistractable by first mastering these internal triggers is only one of two things. We can either fix the source of the problem, figure out what is causing us this emotional discomfort and fix the problem, whether that's an oppressive workplace culture, a difficult family situation, whatever the case might be, fix the problem. Or where we can't fix the problem, our only other choice is to learn tactics to cope with that discomfort in a healthy manner rather than a harmful manner. So let's make this concrete. I really want to give you some tactics that you can use today to help you master these internal triggers so that you can start becoming indistractable. So the first thing that you can do, psychologists tell us, is to note the sensation. That just by writing down what is that internal trigger that you feel, fear, loneliness, anxiety, stress, fatigue, whatever that sensation is, if you can identify what that sensation is and write it down, that's an important first step. The next thing that you can do is to get curious about that sensation, not contemptuous, okay? Curious rather than contemptuous. Many people, when they get distracted, they fall into two categories. We call these the blamers or the shamers. The blamers, they blame stuff outside themselves. It's my iPhone, it's my boss, it's Slack, it's Facebook, it's stuff outside of me. Oh, I hear this all the time. It's the modern world these days. But of course, you can't do anything about that stuff. It's not going away. And so it's futile to blame things outside of you. On the other end of the spectrum is what we call the shamers. The shamers don't blame things outside themselves. They shame themselves. They say there's something wrong with me, or you know what, I'm always like this. I'm lazy. I have a short attention span, or this is my personality type. And so they shame themselves when they get distracted. And of course, that backfires because what do we do when we feel shame? Well, we feel bad. And what do you do when you feel bad? You become more likely to feel those uncomfortable internal triggers. And what do we do to escape those uncomfortable internal triggers? Seek more distraction. So that doesn't work either. So we don't want to be blamers. We don't want to be shamers. We want to be claimers. Claimers claim responsibility not for their feelings. Do you know you cannot control how you feel? That is outside of your control. The thoughts that pop into your head, your urges, not under your control. The only thing you can control is how you respond to those urges and feelings. For example, when you feel the urge to sneeze, you can't control that urge. Once you feel it, you already felt it. It's too late. You don't control the urge. What you control is what you do in response to that urge to sneeze, right? Do you sneeze all over everyone, or do you get a handkerchief and cover your face, right? So how you respond to those internal triggers, hence the word responsibility, is paramount. By claiming responsibility for that sensation and making sure that it leads you towards traction rather than distraction. Here's a very practical way we can do this. This is called the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule says that we can give in to any distraction, whether that's, let me just Google this one thing, let me just check email, let me just check Facebook, let me eat that piece of chocolate cake, whatever it might be, that distraction, that thing you don't want to do. You can do it. You can give into it in 10 minutes, okay? Not for 10 minutes. Some people confuse this with what I'm saying. They say, oh, I can eat cake for 10 minutes. No, no, no. You can give into it in 10 minutes, okay? In 10 minutes. And for those 10 minutes, here's what I want you to do. I want you to either get back to the task at hand, whatever it is that you said you would do with your time, go back to that, or when you feel that sensation, what I want you to do is surf the urge. Surfing the urge acknowledges that these internal triggers, these uncomfortable emotional states, they're like waves. They crest and then they subside. And what psychologists tell us, if we can just wait out that sensation by just feeling it for a minute. Sometimes, you know, I'll take out my phone, I'll say, set the alarm for 10 minutes, I'll put down my phone, and my job is to just feel whatever that sensation is. What am I experiencing right now? What is that sensation? Where is it coming from? And what you will find, if you can just sit with it for just 10 minutes and tell yourself, when those 10 minutes are up, I can give into that distraction, 9 times out of 10, by the time those 10 minutes are up, that sensation will have passed and the urge to become distracted will no longer be present. Very simple technique. I didn't make it up. It actually comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. It's an old technique, very, very effective. And this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more in my book, Indistractable, that I'd love to share with you. Unfortunately, I only have 30 minutes, so I don't have enough time to share everything. And I need to tell you about the other 3 steps to becoming indistractable. The second step to becoming indistractable is to make time for traction. Now, a very common remark that I hear these days is, you know, I had so much to do and I wanted to get all this stuff done and I planned to do this and I planned to do that, and somehow I got distracted. And when I ask people, well, what was it that you planned to do? What did you get distracted from? They say, oh, look at my to-do list. No, I said, no, 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 that's not what I asked. I said, what did you plan to do with your time, right? How did you want to spend your time? What did you get distracted from? And I say, show me your calendar. And when they show it to me, they take out their phone, they show me their calendar, and most of the time, most of their day is blank. Well, here's the thing, guys. You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. Let me say that again. You have no right to call something a distraction if you don't know what it distracted you from. If you have blank space in your day, somebody is going to decide for you how to spend that time. That if you don't schedule your day, someone else will. And the solution couldn't be simpler. It's planning out your day. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Nir is telling me to plan out every minute of my day? Yes, I am. And that feeling that you feel right now, okay? That feeling of I could never do that. That's too rigid. That's not my personality type. I can't plan a time. I need to be free. I need to make sure that people can contact me any time of the day. I hate to tell you this. That feeling that you experience right now, that hesitation, that's the fear of having to do the hard work. That's what that feeling is. Because let me tell you, if we don't plan our time, somebody is going to plan it for us. Our boss, our kids, the news, whatever Donald Trump decides to tweet, something is going to eat up that day. There are too many people out there that want your time and are going to get it unless you decide in advance how you want to spend every minute of your day. Not just for work. Okay, it's not just about work. It's also about planning the other things in your life that are important. Our lives aren't measured by just the work we do. Whatever is important to you, what I want you to do is to turn your values into time, whatever your values are. If taking care of your body is one of your values, do you have time for exercise, and do you have a bedtime built in there? If relationships are important to you, do you have regular meetings with the people you love in your life? Do you have time to call your parents, your siblings, your best friends? Is that on your schedule? If time for important focused work is important to you, if I asked you, how many of you, your jobs require you to think? How many of you think in your jobs? I'm guessing almost everybody listening to me has that as part of their job. They need time to think. Well, where's that time, right? It's not happening between the Slack messages and the phone calls and the emails. So that time for focused work, that time to think, needs to be in your schedule as well. We have to make time for traction by planning the time, not the output. I'm about to sacrifice a sacred cow for you. I'm going to tell you something that for many of you is going to blow your mind, okay? Your to-do list is killing your productivity. To-do lists are one of the worst things you can do if you want to get things done. And I know many of us have heard that that's how we get things done. We have to keep to-do lists. But think about this for a minute. What is a to-do list? A to-do list is a register of output. It's all the things we want to finish, right? The output in our day. Now, if you went to a baker, okay, you went to a baker and said, look, I need 100 loaves of bread. He'd say, no problem. I need flour, I need yeast, I need sugar, I need salt. That's the input to get the output. Makes sense, common sense, right? But when it comes somehow to knowledge work, to people in the building products out there, right? You know what the output is. The output is all that stuff on your to-do list. But what's the input? You're not baking with flour and yeast. What's the input? The input is two things: time and attention. That's it. But if all you have is a list of output and you're not deciding how you are going to get the input, you're fooling yourself. And here's why to-do lists are so dangerous. Because every person I've ever talked to that keeps a to-do list, when you ask them, when was the last time you finished everything on your to-do list? Or let me ask it this way. When was the last time you didn't finish everything on your to-do list? Okay, think for yourself. If you keep a to-do list, when was the last time you didn't finish every single thing on your to-do list? You know what almost everyone I have ever asked says? Today and yesterday. Oh yeah, and the day before that, and the day before that. Actually, I never finish everything on my to-do list. So why do we think that to-do lists are so fantastic if they're not really working for anybody, right? Instead of keeping a to-do list, which is nothing more than a register of output, what I want you to do is to start keeping the input. The input is your schedule, your time, right? And so the goal for a time box calendar is to not finish anything. Wait, did you hear what I said? I said the goal is to finish anything. The goal is to work on whatever it is you say you're going to work on for as long as you say you're going to work on it without distraction. That's the only goal. And it turns out people who do that, people who stick to a time box calendar and do whatever it is they say they're going to do for as long as they say they will without distraction, they finish much more than the person who keeps the to-do list. They actually finish more output. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, yeah, but I don't always control my time. My boss wants me to do this. I'm always interrupted. I have to be on call. My clients need me. We are a distributed workforce. I need to always be on Slack. No, you don't. What I want you to do is to plan at least some time in your day for that reflective work, that time to think. 30 minutes, an hour, they can wait. You need that time to think. And if you don't plan that time and protect it, somebody's going to steal it from you. There's a reason we call it paying attention. We pay our attention just like we pay money. It's valuable. Protect it and keep it. Now, if you keep that half an hour for yourself and then you say the rest of the day I need to be available, fine. That might be part of your job. But for whatever it is important to you to protect that reflective work time, have it in your schedule. We need to spend more time concentrating and less time communicating. So many of us spend our entire day constantly communicating so that there's no time for actual thinking. And part of the problem is that all that communicating, the meetings, the phone calls, the Slack channels, the emails, they come coupled with these external triggers that can lead us towards distraction. Now, these external triggers, there are some professions where these external triggers are literally a matter of life and death. And I want to talk about these for a bit. You know, if I were to ask you, what's the third leading cause of death in the United States of America last year? The third leading cause of death. I'll give you a clue for what the first two are. Number one is heart disease. Number two is cancer. Number three, if it were a disease, believe it or not, the third leading cause of death would have been prescription mistakes. Prescription mistakes. People inside hospitals receiving the wrong medication or the wrong dosage of medication from doctors and nurses. Can you believe that? And this problem is caused 100% by distraction, by people being tapped on the shoulder at work by a colleague and making mistakes because a colleague interrupted them. Does this sound familiar? I know many of you are not nurses. Most of you are probably not nurses, and yet you probably experience this every single day. Every time someone taps us on the shoulder, okay, we're not giving someone the wrong medication, but our work is suffering in a way that we don't even realize until it's too late. Let me tell you what these nurses did. These nurses found an amazing solution that reduced this problem by 88%. They almost eliminated this problem. You want to know what the solution was? The solution was plastic vests. These nurses started wearing plastic vests that told their colleagues, oh, drug round in progress, do not disturb. This almost eliminated the problem. So why do I tell you this story? What's the metaphor here? Well, what if we started telling our colleagues that we cannot be interrupted, that we are indistractable at the moment? Maybe when we get back to work, I know many of you are quarantined, you're working from home. What if we started using something like this on our computers at work that tell our colleagues, oh, please do not disturb unless it's really important. I can't be disturbed right now, for that half an hour of focused work time to tell them you're indistractable. I know many of you are working from home. You have kids at home. That's a big challenge. Our kids can be external triggers as well. I'm going to give you a magic solution that fixes this problem. Here's what I want you to do. If you work from home with kids, I have a little girl who's 11 years old. What I want you to do is to find the silliest hat you have, okay? The silliest hat. You put that hat on your head and you tell your child, a child of 4 or 5 years old will understand this. You say, look, honey, this is called the concentration crown. When mommy or daddy wears the concentration crown, that means that he or she needs to do work without interruption. So if you see the concentration crown, that means daddy needs to be left alone for that time, okay? Very effective with kids. It's also really effective with spouses too, working from home. A very, very effective way to hack back those external triggers so that they don't distract us. We can also use technology to help prevent us from getting distraction. Everybody's device comes with do not disturb while driving. Very effective technique so that if you're afraid someone might need to contact you during that focused work time, you push one button, and if they call or email you, they'll receive an automatic message that says, I can't talk right now. If this is urgent, text me with the word urgent and the message will come through. Everybody's phone comes with this. Almost nobody uses it. It's incredibly effective because they don't need to know whether you're driving or not. And you can, by the way, customize the message so that it says I'm indistractable. If it's urgent, text me with the word urgent. Another thing, how many of us have desktops that look like this? Why? We don't need to live like this. I used to do this. Terrible. Studies show us that all of those external triggers degrade our performance. Even if we don't click on all those GIFs and files, they still degrade our performance. We don't have to live like that. We can clear all that clutter away, not only on our desktops, but also on our phones. 2/3 of people with a smartphone, 2/3 of people with a smartphone never change their notification settings. We can get rid of all those pings and dings so that we're constantly not distracted by all those external triggers. We need to ask ourselves a simple question. Is the external trigger serving me, or am I serving it? Right? And if it is not serving me, if I am serving it, it's got to go. We got to get rid of it. And that includes adjusting those notifications on all our different devices. And that's simple stuff. All of us should be doing this. But importantly, we need to leave those distracting devices outside of meetings, whether it's when we go back to the office, whether it's with our families. We need to have no phone zones so that if we are going to be present physically, we need to be there both in body and mind. So leave those distracting devices outside of all our in-person meetings. Finally, the last step to becoming indistractable is to prevent distraction with pacts. Pacts are pre-commitment devices. And the first story of someone ever using a pre-commitment device comes to us from the story of Ulysses in the Odyssey, told 2,500 years ago, this ancient story. This Greek hero has to sail his ship past the island of the Sirens. Now, the Sirens are these mythical creatures that sing this magical song, and any sailor who hears the siren song crashes his ship onto the shore of the Sirens Island and dies. Now, Ulysses knows this is going to happen, and he takes precautions. He makes sure he doesn't do something he doesn't want to do. He wants to prevent getting distracted. So here's what he does. He tells everyone in his crew to put beeswax inside their ears so they can't hear the siren song. And then he tells them, I want you to bind me to the mast of my ship, and no matter what I do, no matter what I say, do not let me go. And you know what? It works. He's able to sail his ship past the island of the Sirens, where he safely returns his crew and his men and his ship safely home. So I hope you understand the metaphor here. You are Ulysses. There's lots of distracting stuff out there. And of course, that could also be you there on the shore, dead if you're not careful, if you don't take precautions to make sure you don't get distracted. How do we make these pacts? How do we make what we call a Ulysses pact? Well, we can use tech to block out tech distraction. Here are two examples of tools. There's many, many tools I talk about in the book, but here are two I use all the time. Self-Control is an app that I use on my desktop. Whenever I need to do focused work, I push one button, and all of those tempting websites, my email, Google, the New York Times, all that distracting stuff that I could go to is blocked, just for that period of time when I know I need to do focused work. Another app I use almost every day is called Forest. It's a wonderful app. I just used it today. Every time I need to do focused work, that reflective work, that time to think, I take out my phone, I open this app called Forest, I dial in how much time I need to do focused work for, and I hit a little button that says plant. Now, when I push that button that says plant, this cute little virtual tree is planted. You see the cute little virtual tree? Now, if I pick up the phone and do anything with it, the cute little virtual tree dies. And I don't want to be a virtual tree murderer. And so it's enough of a reminder to tell me, oh, that's not what I want to do right now. I made a promise to myself to stay focused and not get distracted. Another thing you can do is to find someone to work next to. Find a focus friend, right? When we go back to the office, if you can find a colleague to work next to, very, very effective. But what do we do now that we're working from home? Or maybe you don't have a colleague you feel comfortable working next to. Well, technology to the rescue. This is a company I liked so much, I actually invested in the company. It's called focusmate.com. Here's how it works. You go onto focusmate.com. You pick a time you want to do your reflective work during that focused work time. You find somebody to work with. Well, you hit a button. You come back at that time. Let's say you say, okay, 9 a.m. I really need to finish that RFP. I need to really finish those wireframes, whatever the case might be. 9 a.m. I have to do that project. You log in. If you don't log in, you get a bad review. So you make sure you log in because you don't want someone to leave you a 1-star review for not showing up. When you show up, you see this little video screen. You see the person you're working with. This was an example here, this screenshot of when I was doing focused work with this medical school student from the Czech Republic. He was studying human anatomy. I was preparing this talk, and it was incredibly effective. This simple tool turns out to be unbelievably effective at helping you do whatever it is you say you're going to do by making a pact with another person. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more we can do to reduce distractions with pacts. There are effort pacts, price pacts, identity pacts, which we didn't get to talk to. Very, very effective techniques. We can basically use tech to block out tech distractions, but I want to make one note here. This technique, you have to be cautious. Sometimes when I tell people this technique, they jump right to it, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you have to do the other 3 steps first. You first have to master internal triggers, make time for traction, and hack back the external triggers first before this 4th step. Okay, so don't jump ahead. It doesn't work. It will backfire if you do these before the other 3. The second time that this can backfire is for a certain type of person. Some people, when they fall off track, okay, as we all invariably will. We all will invariably fail from time to time on the path to becoming indistractable. Some people can't get back on track. Why? These are people who are not self-compassionate, okay? Studies find that the more self-compassionate someone is, the more likely they are to reach their long-term goals. Well, how do we become self-compassionate? It's very simple. We talk to ourselves the way we would talk to a good friend. Maybe the way you would talk to me. If I told you about what happened with my daughter when I got distracted and how I'm embarrassed about what I did when I wanted to be with somebody I love very much, would you tell me I'm a horrible human being? Would you say I'm a terrible father? Not if you were my good friend, you wouldn't say that. And yet, I'll be honest with you, I used to beat myself up saying those exact same things all the time. And you know what? It's not true and it's not helpful. And here's what else isn't helpful. This idea that technology is hijacking our brains, that it's addicting everyone, that there's nothing we can do because the big bad tech companies are distracting us. It's not true, because there's so much we can do. We can master the internal triggers. We can make time for traction. We can hack back the external triggers. And finally, we can prevent distraction with pacts. So there's a lot more in my book, Indistractable. I hope you'll check it out when you get a chance. But the message I want to leave with you today is that we can do this. We can control our attention. We can choose our life. We can get the best out of technology without letting it get the best of us, because we can become indistractable. And with that, I want to thank you so much for your attention. And I have a favor to ask. I would love your feedback regarding this presentation. Would love to know what you thought. If you wouldn't mind going to this URL, opinion2.us. Notice it's not .com, it's opinion2.us. There's a very short survey there. It's only 5 questions. Would love to know what you thought. If you have an iPhone, you can just point it at that QR code with your camera and it'll take you right to the survey. Would love to know what you thought of the presentation. As soon as you click submit for the survey on the Google form, it will give you a link to my SlideShare page where you can have all the slides you just saw. Feel free to share them with your friends, your colleagues, your family. And if you have any questions, unfortunately, I don't know if we have much time. I hope we do, but if we don't have any time for questions, please feel free to check out my website, nirandfar.com. And there's a contact page there. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them afterwards. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nir. Fantastic. Thank you so much. By the way, of course, I just realized I didn't introduce you properly. Nir Eyal, best-selling author of Hooked and Indistractable, a public speaker, consultant, and also lecturer at Stanford Graduate School of Business and Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. Nir, thank you so much. Actually, we don't have time for Q&A because we have our next speaker already with us. But I'm pretty sure that you can follow up with Nir on Twitter and also at his own website. A reminder again, that is www.nirandfar.com.